Hi all, dear listeners. Welcome to this new episode of my podcast, A Digital Tomorrow. Today I'm joined by Varlam Ebanoidze from the National Bank of Georgia. Varlam is currently working as head of FinTech and SubTech development at the Innovation Office of the National Bank of Georgia. And well, aside from that, he's a very important person in the FinTech world. He's also co-founder of RiskTech for FinTech. He's also engaged in the Global Impact FinTech Forum Gift, same as myself. So he's wearing many hats in the FinTech industry now, but I would say those are like the most perhaps important roles that he's playing right now. And I would like to welcome you, Varlam, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you, Oriol, for inviting me to this podcast. It's my pleasure to share my thoughts regarding fintech development strategy in Georgia, how we think about fintech, how we strategize, what are our contextual issues of being small market and having ambitious plans in fintech development. And thank you for inviting and for your time.
No, the pleasure is absolutely mine, and I think it's going to be interesting to discuss these topics that you mentioned, fintech development in Georgia, the National Bank of Georgia's approach towards fintech, etc. Because albeit the fact that, as you said, Georgia is a small market, it's very advanced fintech-wise, nonetheless. So I think that's going to make this episode much more interesting and relevant. I think it's going to give interesting tips to other countries as well about how to see what Georgia is doing. So I leave the floor open to you because I know that you want to present some slides, I think.
Yes, I can present some slides about our fintech strategy. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
It's in a full mode, I hope.
It's not full yet. Not yet.
Is it okay now?
No, it's not full mode. I mean, I can see it well, but not in full mode. But still, I think it's going to be fine if you want to.
Oh, it's going to be fine. Okay, thank you. So let me start with just listing key milestones in our fintech development journey. We at National Bank of Georgia have established FinTech and SubTech Development Department in 2019. In 2020, MBG has joined Global Financial Innovation Network called GFIN. Financial Innovation Office was established in 2020. We have regulation laboratory launched since 2020. In 2020, we have introduced the open banking framework, and now we have it in operational mode, having all basic APIs on it, as well as joined by non-bank institutions and fintechs. Digital banking license and principles published in 2020, and we have 1 month ago granted one digital bank license, and I'll talk in details about this process on the next slides. And we are at the brink of moving from research and development phase to pilot phase of our CBDC project, which is Digital Gel. And in a short year of 2022, especially second half of the year when I actually joined the National Bank of Georgia, in a nutshell can be characterized that developing kind of countrywide fintech and open finance strategy, and also it's important that we started stakeholder engagement in this strategy and communication. These strategies to different key stakeholders, both private and public sector, because for execution, it is equally important to have established kind of efficient multidisciplinary formats for communication, these countrywide strategies, because sometimes it goes beyond the mandate of the central banks. I'm not sure it is well visible, but we call it
no, actually,
one-pager.
Actually, the only slide I'm still seeing is the first one, the one with the title.
Okay. Do you see next slide now?
Yes, now I see the third one, yes.
Okay, third one. It's a small font and not everything will be visible, but anyways, this is our approach to developing kind of proactive strategies in a one-pager formats. And in the beginning of the flowchart, we started it with asking a big question, which is what are the Georgia's unique resources and capabilities for fintech development? And the answer to this question was quite obvious, that we don't have market forces to really on. What I mean by market forces is we don't have big demographic power, a small country, 3.5 million people, and also Georgian fintech market and banking sector in general is quite competitive already, and it is, I think, within the region, one of the most technologically developed banking sector, because Georgian banking sector, as Georgia is 30 years old after gaining the independence from Soviet Union, and our banks don't have legacy issues. And our biggest banks are acting like big fintechs. They absorbing innovation. It's rocket speed. Sometimes they are more agile than fintechs. But anyways, we thought that still in this kind of competitive market, we can do as a regulator something to further develop and remove barriers for new entrants. And we see our function as an enabler for the basic banking infrastructure for newcomers, new players, and this is what you see in gray boxes. So with this, we are following overall trend of removing infrastructure barriers within the fintech, which was started by Amazon Web Services 10 years ago. And now if you are entering into financial industry, you don't need to start with the building on renting the building or construction business to enter to financial business. You just rent space on Amazon Web Service or any other cloud and start your journey into financial services. But there are still other barriers. And next big barrier is data barrier. So we look at open banking and then open finance as an instrument to give to new entrants same condition, same starting positions. So we're translating our mandate of being open fintech friendly approach with giving some real stuff instruments to new players, like open banking, open APIs, CBDC infrastructure. We also see it as an enabler for the ecosystem in mid and long term, and also eKYC portal in general, both for retail as well as SMEs, as a basic enabler for fintechs and newcomers. This is our strategic choice in a nutshell. I'm not going to go all the details of this one pager now, but these are the main choices, and how we see ourselves as a regulator to support fintech development within the country. And next, I hope you can see now next slide.
Yes, perfect.
Next one pager is dedicated to our open banking via open finance to open data vision, which is a journey from open banking to open finance as a final, or data economy as a final destination. Our choice here is that we are not sticking ourselves to any open banking, any particular open banking framework. So we developed open banking based on Berlin Group standards, and we have already key APIs opened by banks for sharing, like data aggregation and payment initiation. We do experimentize with QR code payments, for example, or we are supporting embedded finance trend as well. So our final objective is to have kind of added value services for the end user and for newcomers to this open finance world, and whether we achieve this with the Berlin Group standards or open or embedded finance approach, it is secondary. We are thinking in terms of value-driven use cases, and this is exactly what you've seen here on value curve, consumer value curve framework, which shows how much those use cases are valued by consumer. We have here the use cases like comparison tools to provider switching, online brokerage that provide financial products with the best value, or number 6, digital tools to assess the ESG profile of the consumer, or banking as a platform services. We have identified those use cases because we have so-called bottom-to-up approach. What I mean by that is that we looked into the most contextual problems of our consumers and identified based on those needs use cases. In general, we are very cautious in the beginning of any innovation to balance between being problem obsessed and solutions obsessed. Because nowadays regulators are in the shoes of startups, in the shoes of innovators, I guess first time in the history, because open banking and PSD2 was the kind of first big example of regulation-driven innovation. And we encounter here as innovators same dilemma as every startup encounters in the beginning of the journey. You can come up with the best APIs, with best blockchain technology features, but eventually nobody will use it on the market. So that's why we thought that better to identify those problems at the bottom of the pyramid, because every innovation will be disruptive if only it tackles bottom line of the pyramid, as Clayton Christensen says it's in its theory. So this was our approach of strategizing on value-added use cases regarding the open banking, and then moving from open banking to open finance, because you can see here use cases regarding QR code payments or use cases which interact between retail, SME, or agriculture. This is all contextual use cases for the Georgia. One of the strategic choices I would like to mention, and it's also reflected here with number 10 QR code payments, is that since we are a small country, we want more integrations of our FinTech with our neighbors and beyond, even beyond the region. And that's why we are proactively approaching some of our neighbors and already in good technical talks about integrations of our QR code payment standards with theirs to make interoperability. So in our strategy, it is FinTech-enabled regional cooperation has important place. Also, we want to have as much interoperability as possible when it comes to our open banking standards with other countries. And that's why we have initiated a couple of months ago project of inventory of all standards worldwide, because open banking doesn't recognize the borders, and we already have some intermediary results which countries are most close to our Berlin Group standards or other technical requirements to start proactively initiating some talks with them, because these integrations come with cost benefit issues, right? If integration is easier, you would prefer to start the counterparties which are easily interoperable with your standards. And also we look in criteria like if our countries have trade relationships, so FinTech eventually is enabler for other economic relations. So this is in brief about our biggest FinTech choices when it comes to open banking and the journey to open finance. Next, we are further developing such instruments as Innovation Office and the Regulatory Sandbox. And you can see here on this slide that with Innovation Office, with the Regulatory Sandbox, we cover NBG regulated entities only. So in order to new FinTech or other non-regulated entity to adopt into regulatory sandbox, it needs to be regulated. And to not have gap, we have established Innovation Office for those beyond our regulation yet, and that's why we are here covering MBG regulated as well as non-regulated entities already. And we have accumulated already some practical experience through our regulatory sandbox. For example, digital onboarding process went through our regulatory sandbox. We have a few applicants and we are testing their solutions for almost 6 months, and eventually once we ensure that mistakes are under acceptable level, we then made amendments into AML regulation, and so now open and now digital onboarding is open for others generally. And we also have a regulatory sandbox approach when it comes to alternative data-based credit scoring, and I'll show these slides later you.
Mhm.
This is our digital banking licensing process. We also approach here with the regulatory sandbox strategy. In the beginning, at first stage, we have 10 times less requirements to regulatory capital, and we have 3 years longer incubation period for new digital banking licensing applicants. In the end of the 3 year, all requirements should be fulfilled.
Okay.
But we are especially looking at business models in the beginning of this journey. At first stage, we validate business models, and we are looking for differentiations. We want to have with this new tool not just one more bank, but the one which would be different from the existing ones in terms of innovation, in terms of bringing more inclusiveness into finance, or making affordable new services to underserved. And that was the logic behind our decision of approving a first digital bank licensing for Paysera Group, which is a Lithuanian-based company, international company, and capitalizing on SEPA, which is a single European payment scheme. And this through this bank, consumers have a value proposition to open EU bank accounts with Georgian bank accounts because this bank is based in Lithuania in EU, and they are bringing eventually SEPA even before we have it joined as a country, and this is a value proposition for SMEs as well as for retail segments, because SEPA makes every payments near to instant payment, like local payments, both in terms of speed and in terms of price. That's for about our digital banking licensing process.
Okay.
And then, yes, here you can see other companies already. Just Statistics, those went through our regulatory sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
Update Credit Information Bureau regulations and create platforms, GDPRization of client data.
Mm-hmm.
So we are trying to bring into hands of the consumer as more power as possible when it comes to data. Just recently, we have updated our credit bureau regulation, and we call it GDPRization of this process, because we have established new form of non-bank entity, which will be regulated by us, and startups which have ideas to capitalize on credit scoring, new innovative credit scoring based on alternative data. They have opportunity to establish this type of new entity called platform, and we have here far less requirements regarding capital or any other requirements compared to traditional credit bureau. So this was our attempt to remove the barrier for those have ideas of capitalizing on credit scoring. And this gives also opportunity in the hand of the end user to better ways capitalize on their data and really be owner of the data. And one of the more changes regarding this so-called GDPRization we have made recently is we established money transfers database, common money transfer database. If there is a client consent and every institution, every credit institution or regulated institution will be mandated to share the international money transfer information during disbursement into this common database. Georgia is an immigrant-rich country. 25% of Georgians live abroad, and this kind of approach gives more data points to have digital loans for those immigrants, because it will become much easier because of this money transfers, which consist around 10% of the country's GDP, to have alternative data for credit scoring and to honor this data and share it based on their ownership requirements. This is why we call it GDPRization of more and more data points. I have already mentioned that we employ at Regulatory Sandbox data-driven statistical AI machine learning model risk management, which in practice calls, it looks like fintechs or banks are approaching us with the alternative credit scoring models, and our team in this unit are assessing and validating the model through the Regulatory Sandbox approach. And once this model reaches acceptable level of the mistake, then they have approval for regulator to launch it into production.
Nice.
Next, regarding the CBDC, I will talk briefly. As I mentioned, we have approached open banking, open finance, and we had same approach with this solution, balancing solution obsession with the problem obsession. And we have identified 10-15 most relevant use cases for Georgian case in terms of CBDC.
Okay.
We have approached again the bottom of the pyramid. We thought the use cases like making money transfers cheaper for immigrants, for example, or making merchant acquiring fees less, or one of the use case we are ready to go for the pilot phase is connected to the real estate deals. So instead of making real estates through escrow account, which is not cheap, we are proposing our real estate agency and cooperating with them on this use case based on smart contracts. It will make 100% risk-free these deals for end user, and also dramatically cheaper. With this, we also considered so-called stakeholder strategy during choosing the use cases for CBDC, because CBDC goes just beyond mandate of central bank, and our strategy was to have as valuable and allies as possible, and that's why, and also follow the end users adding value. Since Georgian real estate sector is booming right now, and also real estate agency is for us a valuable stakeholder. We decided as one of the first use case, this real estate deals use case. But in general, we have been able to identify through our bottom to up approach almost 15 use cases, which is value adding for Georgia, and then mapped those use cases, the programmability feature with the smart contract feature of CBDC. We have also considered in our thinking process complementarity thing of achieving this, because we have in parallel project connected with instant payments locally, upgrading instant payment system, and we don't want to overlap with this project, but to have mutually complement each other. So this was one of the variables when choosing these use cases as well. And with this approach, we have been able to aggregate from bottom to up and come up overall objectives why we are following this CBDC project. So this is briefly regarding our key priorities and approaches when it comes to fintech development. Happy to answer.
No, I mean, thank you very much for sharing all this. I think you pretty much covered everything I wanted to discuss with you, because the idea was to talk about fintech in Georgia, the National Bank of Georgia's approach towards fintech, and also CBDCs in Georgia, because I know that you are working on CBDCs as well, on digital gels. So I think all those use cases that you mentioned are actually going to be very interesting for my audience, because as you know, I'm very involved in the CBDC area. So getting to hear more from you about which specific use cases you are going to test for the digital gel, I think that's actually very interesting. And before wrapping this up, because we are actually going to run out of time soon, I just wanted to ask you a very general question. I know it's perhaps too general, but you said that Georgia is a small country, 3.5 million people living there. So I would say, why Georgia? Why is Georgia making so many efforts in this fintech area, whereas some other countries, even bigger countries, are not? What makes Georgia different or unique in this sense, according to you?
Yes, because we are a small country and we need to innovate. And I've mentioned also that one of the most developed sectors in the country is banking sector. Since collapse of the Soviet Union, the banking sector is the sector which has been developed mostly among other sectors of the economy, and it created talent pool as well in banking. So we have a few strong bases to think that we can really develop and capitalize on that further for regarding the fintech. When thinking about unique resources and capabilities, you can be based on to further develop. So talent is important to develop. Basic financial infrastructure is important for fintech development. And then now we as a regulator are giving additional tools. As I mentioned, we are supporting overall trend of infrastructure barriers removal, which has started by Amazon Web Services, and with open banking, open finance approach, with the added value approach, we are just making our best to support with the so-called public good newcomers and as well as end users.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Varlam, for sharing all this valuable information about fintech in Georgia and everything that you are doing in the National Bank of Georgia. I'm sure that my listeners will learn a lot after listening to you and reading your slides as well. They learn a lot from fintech from Georgia. So I would like to thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Oriol, for inviting me. It was a pleasure to share with the audience, and we'll be happy to answer questions as it comes consequently. Thank you
The
very
pleasure
much.
was absolutely mine, and well, to all my listeners, please stay tuned for the next episodes. And thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you, Oriol. Thank you. Bye.